Good morning, welcome back to Mesa, Thailand. And I was just thinking that the sharp-eyed among you might have noticed that this YouTube channel is called The Cycling Canadian, and yet this is my main mode of transportation below me. My feet. I seem to walk everywhere I go. So you might be wondering, what the heck is up with that? The short answer is that I do like to ride a bike, and I have gone on relatively long bike tours in the past to different countries, and I fully intended to shoot video while riding my bike right now, but since I started shooting video, I just haven't gotten around to it. Ironically, this morning I just looked up what I think of as my very first YouTube video, and I shot that video, or I posted it anyway, on December 8th, 2018, and the title of that video, my first video on the Cycling Canadian channel, was called A Walk to Dhaka's Buriganga River. So even on my very first video, not only did I walk to the river in Dhaka, that's what I called the video. It was all about walking to the river. So that's kind of funny. So that is the short answer to this mystery. The long answer starts with the fact that the name, The Cycling Canadian, predates the YouTube channel by a lot of years. I chose the name a long time ago. I don't even know what year it was anymore, when I was living and working in Taipei, Taiwan. I was working for a publishing company in Taiwan. I was a writer and an editor for these magazines the company produced, and they sold these magazines to the schools in Taiwan, and the schools would use them as supplementary material for teaching English in the classroom. So that was my job for a long time, was writing and editing material that was used for teaching English in the schools of Taiwan. And I had a fairly regular life there. In fact, that was the most regular I've ever been in my entire life. The longest I've ever lived in one place and had one job and had an apartment and my own scooter. Not only my own scooter, but an official Taiwanese driver's license for that scooter, health insurance, you know, all the trappings of a regular life. That's what my life was like in Taiwan. And I started to think about leaving Taiwan. It was time to go, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do when I left. But my idea was to pack up all of my belongings, basically sell everything that was in my apartment. Didn't amount to very much, but get rid of everything, put everything I owned onto a bicycle, and then I flew to the Philippines from Taiwan with just my bicycle and a set of pannier bags. If I can find a picture of what it looked like at that time, I'll post it here. So that was my entire world right there, that bike and everything on it, when I left from Taiwan and went to the Philippines. I had a co-worker at the time in Taiwan who had a quite successful traveling blog, a travel website. It was called My Several Worlds. I believe it still exists. I don't know how much she maintains it. I'll put a link to My Several Worlds in the description. And she talked a lot about her website and how much fun she had doing it, and she made it sound quite easy to do, to set up a website, and if you became popular with your website, you could even make some money with it, and that sounded very attractive to me. So with her inspiration and encouragement, I decided to set up my own website, basically a blog. And it kind of made sense for me to do that because I've always been a pretty obsessive journal keeper and amateur photographer. Everywhere I went, I was taking pictures. This was, of course, in the days before digital cameras, so I had a film camera, and you couldn't take as many pictures then as you could now because film and printing pictures was quite expensive. And it was, I think, harder to become a good photographer because you couldn't see the results of your photographs right away. You had to wait days, if not weeks, before you saw the final result. So you couldn't really improve that easily. Of course, with digital cameras, you see the result instantly, and you can make adjustments and make the picture look better, frame it better, adjust the exposure, and you naturally become a better photographer, I think, with digital cameras. But anyway, I was taking a lot of pictures, and I was doing a lot of writing. I would write in my journal, but I would also combine writing in my journal with writing emails, or not emails, but letters to friends. So if I was traveling somewhere, I would wake up in the morning, and the very first thing I do every single morning was open up a notebook and get out a pen, and I would start writing about whatever happened the day before. And my poor friends in Canada would receive packages in the mail. You'd think they were book manuscripts, but it would just be another letter from Doug, and these letters could be 50 pages long, 75 pages long. They were huge letters. So I was doing all this writing anyway. I was taking all these pictures anyway. So when my friend said, hey, why don't you set up a website? It's easy to do. I thought, why not? By that point, I don't think my friends could even be bothered to read my letters anymore. Just reading my correspondence would take so much time that would be like a full-time job for them. So I thought I might as well take some of what I was writing and just put it on a website, put some pictures on that website, and that might add something interesting to the trips that I was taking. I also had this idea that a kind of community would build up around the website. I thought people would read my stories. I would have a contact form on the website. People could send me messages. I'd get to know them. And then if and when I came to their country or visited their city, we could meet in person. We could hang out together. And I thought a little traveling world would build up around the website. Spoiler alert, that did not happen. For one thing, websites just aren't that popular. Nobody reads. There are so many photographs on the internet. Nobody really cares about your photographs. They can be beautiful and amazing, but the internet is jammed with beautiful and amazing photographs. So things did not really build up in the social world around my website. And at the same time, technically, it just totally defeated me. The technology behind setting up a website, getting a domain name, getting hosting, installing WordPress, all that stuff that my friend found effortless just destroyed me. Absolutely reduced me to a quivering wreck of a man. I couldn't figure out anything. Everything I tried to do led to a technical problem. Every idea I had broke something. I had no idea how to fix anything on the website. I ended up involved in these endless email chains with the tech support department at my hosting company, trying to figure out what was wrong. They would send me detailed emails packed with information designed to help me. And I didn't understand a word in any of the emails. I had no idea what they were talking about, like no clue. And I would go online and start doing research and figure, well, I'm not a total idiot. I can learn new things. I can read books and I mean, heck, I went to university and I passed courses. I'm good at studying, if nothing else. But as much as I read, as much as I studied, as much as I worked, I could not come to grips with even the simplest things to do with this website. And perhaps other people can relate to my experience, but you start with this idea that it's going to be a creative thing. I'm going to have a website, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to take pictures, and it's going to be a creative endeavor. But by the time the dust settles, you spend 90% of your time just maintaining the website and dealing with the technology of the website, and you only have 10% of your time left over to all that creative stuff you thought you were going to do. So it really became all about maintaining the website and learning about WordPress and about HTML and website hosting. And there was very little time left over for actually writing about trips I was taking and posting pictures and interacting with people. Like, none of that ever happened. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. What I really wanted to talk about was the name, The Cycling Canadian, because when you set up a website, of course, you need an URL. You need a URL, and that is the name of your website and how people find you. And I had to choose a name for my website. And at that time, there wasn't a lot available. All the names were taken. So you have these websites that help you choose a name for your website, and you can just type in name after name after name, and you'll find out that all of those names are gone. Like, nothing was available anymore. It was actually pretty common in those days for people to buy and register URLs and then keep them. They don't even use them, but then if somebody wanted them, they could sell them for large amounts of money. It was a growth industry at the time, and no matter what website name you went looking for, you very quickly found out that it had already been taken. So day after day after day, I was playing around with these website name generators too, where you could actually just put words into it, and the program would automatically combine them in different ways and then check to see whether those were available. And I started to think about who I was and what I was going to do, and I thought, well, you know, I'm a Canadian and I'm probably going to go cycling. So I'm typing all these words into this website name generator, and to my surprise, it returned The Cycling Canadian and said it's available. I thought, oh, it's not a great name. Kind of boring, actually, but it had some advantages. I'd noticed in my research that a lot of people chose unusual names for their websites. And then when they wanted to tell people the name of their website, they couldn't just tell them the name. They had to spell it out. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. So if you chose a name like travel adventure, but you spelled it TRAVL adventure, because the regular spelling TRAVEL was already taken, and you called yourself travel but without the E. Okay, that sounds clever. But now for the rest of your life, when someone says, hey, what's the name of your website? You have to say, oh, it's called Travel Adventure, but with no E. So you have to spell it travel without the E, but there still is an E in adventure. And you go into this long discussion because you have to explain every time how to actually write the name of your website. And The Cycling Canadian, you know, I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to explain it. I didn't have to write it down. I could just say it's called The Cycling Canadian. 3 simple words. People could remember it. Didn't have to spell it. And I really was from Canada, and I really was going to do some traveling by bicycle. That was going to be my main mode of transportation. So I thought, okay, the Cycling Canadian is available. I'll take it. And I registered the domain, and that became the name of my troublesome, frustrating, stressful website. Interestingly, I also thought the Cycling Canadian would be a good name because at that time, I thought anyone who would be interested in me and my story, interested enough to check out the website, I thought they would probably be Canadians. Why not? I'm from Canada, and I thought, I know if I as a Canadian, if I see a travel blog from a fellow Canadian, I click on it. I'm interested. I want to follow their story because I can relate to them and their experiences. And okay, I'm a Canadian, you're a Canadian, and I thought the internet had such a global audience, you might as well zero in on a niche market, make that your market. And I thought a natural market for me was cycling and travel and Canadians. So I thought the name would help in that regard. In fact, now that I think about it, I even registered 2 domains for that. I purchased the cyclingcanadian.com and I purchased the cyclingcanadian.ca, the Canadian domain. And I did that because I had this crazy idea that, well, maybe this website will become really popular, and then some other person, a real Canadian, would register the cyclingcanadian.ca, and that will cause confusion with the cyclingcanadian.com. So I thought I better buy both. To this day, I don't know whether that was a wise decision or not, but I own both .ca and .com, and I pay like $14.99 a year for each of them. That's kind of how domains work. So I say that's interesting because it also didn't turn out that way at all. In all this time that I've had the website called thecyclingcanadian.com, no Canadians really have even noticed it or been interested at all. So, I mean, the website was never popular, of course, but the people that did find it or that communicated with me in any way, none of them were from Canada. They were all from the countries that I was in. So if you happen to be in the Philippines, the people of the Philippines are interested in what foreigners like me have to say about their country. As soon as I leave their country and go to Malaysia, they're not interested anymore. They only want to hear about the Philippines. You go to Malaysia and you'll suddenly get a new audience of people from Malaysia who also, hey, what do these foreigners experience when they come to Malaysia? What do they see and what do they think about this place? And you get people from Malaysia reading your website. You go to Thailand, not so much. I find the people of Thailand are a little bit different. They're quite content in their own world, and in my experience, they don't care what anybody thinks of them. They've got their own thing going on, and foreigners, what they're doing here, we've got our own lives to worry about. But in countries, most of the time, that's what would happen. And I noticed other like YouTubers would pick up on that as well. I remember watching Beer for Breakfast for a long time. I haven't checked in with them for a while, so I don't know where they are. But their videos on YouTube are quite popular when they were traveling through Malaysia and countries here in Southeast Asia. And then they took that popularity and then went to Europe to do some traveling there. And they did mention in a couple of videos that once they landed in Europe, views of their videos like really dropped off because the people of Malaysia and other countries that were following them while they were in Malaysia didn't really care that much about what they were up to in Bulgaria or Czechoslovakia, places like that. So that's it's kind of an interesting angle to all of this. I find that I chose the Cycling Canadian thinking that Canadians would be interested in what I was up to, but that hasn't turned out to be true at all. And all of that probably begs the question of, well, if the name, the Cycling Canadian, didn't really work out the way I thought for the website, why do I have that name for the YouTube channel? And I guess that's the main thing I wanted to talk about. It took me a long time to get around to this point, but here's the main point of this little discussion of mine. And that is, when I set up the website, called it the Cycling Canadian, I also set up companion social media sites in other places. So I created a Facebook page called The Cycling Canadian. I now have an Instagram account called The Cycling Canadian. I got the Twitter account called The Cycling Canadian. I think I have the Cycling Canadian accounts, the names for other social media apps that don't even exist anymore. They've all gone out of business. And I don't do very much with Instagram or Facebook or these other sites. Just, as I said, just maintaining the website just about finished me off. So I had very little energy or time left over for anything else. But I did end up with this whole world of social media accounts, all called the Cycling Canadian. And when I discovered the world of YouTube and decided to try making videos myself, hello, I just assumed I would be making videos as I rode my bicycle. The whole idea at that time was to continue bike touring, but instead of taking pictures and writing journal entries for the website, I would shoot video instead and post them to YouTube. That was the idea. But that was 2 years ago, as I said, on December 8th, 2018. That was my first official YouTube video travel vlog, I guess, in Bangladesh. And what I learned even before that, when I was playing around with video in Kuala Lumpur, is that it's not easy to do. It's a whole different thing from taking pictures or writing, because it's new technology, for one thing. I knew nothing about video. I didn't know how to shoot video. I didn't even have the gear to deal with video. Most of the time, I didn't have a laptop, I didn't have a smartphone, I had no way to store video files, I didn't know anything about uploading video or editing video. So I figured, okay, there's a bit of a learning curve here. I have to learn how to do this, and I also have to acquire some new equipment, and it would be very difficult to do that and bike tour at the same time. Bike touring really is amazing. I love it, which again, I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But it takes all your energy, and it takes a lot of energy and time. Plus, you might end up in quite remote places where you're not surrounded by electrical plugs. You can't plug in all your batteries and recharge them and get on Wi-Fi and upload when you're sitting in your tent at the side of the road. So how do you shoot video while you're riding a bike during the day? For one thing, I can do it now while I'm walking, but where's the camera going to go on the bicycle? And to be honest, when you go on bike tours, it can get a little bit monotonous in terms of the telling of the story. I've noticed that in YouTube videos from cyclists, online journals from cyclists, and the one thing I wanted to resist, if at all possible, was the standard cycling approach of every morning you talk about how many kilometers you rode, how much altitude you climbed and lost, the road that you followed, the fact that you've got a headwind blowing against you, the fact that you're climbing uphill and it's really difficult to ride uphill. I mean, that's every day on a bike. You know, there's always a headwind, there's always a hill, it's always raining on you, you're always sweating, you're always tired, you're having a great time. But the same thing does tend to happen a lot every single day. And if you're keeping a journal, there's a risk that your journal falls into this repetitive pattern of, yesterday I rode 150 kilometers and there was a headwind, and today I hope to ride 175 kilometers. And, you know, it's all about numbers and maps and details, and that can get a little bit monotonous. And I didn't want to cover that. So my idea was, well, let's learn how to shoot video first. Let's go to Bangladesh with a backpack. Let's go to Myanmar with a backpack. And let's shoot video while I'm walking around, while I'm staying in nice hotels with air conditioning, and I can plug things in and recharge my batteries and use Wi-Fi. And then once I get all this video stuff figured out, then I can go back to Malaysia, go back to Kuala Lumpur, get my touring bicycle, and then I can start riding my bike and shoot video. And then at this future date, someday, the name, the Cycling Canadian, will make sense. Hopefully. That was the plan anyway. To be honest, even if that does happen, even if all these borders magically open up and I magically end up in Kuala Lumpur and my bike is magically still rideable, not rusted to pieces and falling apart after all this time, or is still there, even if all that happens and I do start bike touring again, I mean, I wouldn't mind changing the name. The Cycling Canadian is a little bit too specific. It's too narrow. It would be better to have a name that's just more general, and I've thought about it from time to time. But two reasons have stopped me from changing the name. One, of course, is that I have so many social media accounts called the Cycling Canadian. Changing the name of one of them throws everything out of whack, and I'd kind of want to also change the names of all the other ones. And I don't have a huge following on Instagram or Facebook under the Cycling Canadian name, so it's not a huge deal. But I don't want to have all these people people who are still following me there, suddenly wonder, hey, where the heck did he go? You know, he changed his name? What, he doesn't love us anymore? Where did the Cycling Canadian go? And I'm now called some other name. And the other reason I haven't done it is, I don't know, names don't seem to matter much anymore. I remember back when I chose the name itself seemed important because you were communicating it as a name, and then you always had to spell it out and people had to write it down. But the world doesn't work that way anymore. The URL doesn't matter. I wrote in a YouTube comment this morning, actually, that I follow a lot of YouTube channels. I'm subscribed to a ton of channels, and I couldn't even tell you the name of their channel. If I thought about it real hard, I might be able to come up with it. But I'm watching their video, I like their video, and then I click on the subscribe button. If I want to tell someone else about this YouTube channel, I just copy a link. I don't tell them the name of it. So the name doesn't really even stick in my head. I might watch some channel, and then if I want to tell you about it, like right now, I'm like, what is their channel called? I can describe them to you. You know, there's these guys from Australia. They like to drop things from a 53-meter tower and smash things, and they're really kind of funny. And I can tell you all these things about these guys, and it's like, what is the name of their channel? I'd have to think really hard, and then I'd go, oh, their channel is called How Ridiculous, something like that. But the name of their channel, to be honest, I never even think about it. So, the Cycling Canadian, good name, bad name, terrible name, it probably doesn't really matter that much in the end. And it is a lot of work to change it. Now, the reason that all of this is on my mind this morning is because in the last couple of days, I had this crazy idea that maybe, since I'm still here in Thailand and I may be here for another 3 months at least, maybe I could go for a bike trip, like a bike tour here. And as soon as this idea popped into my head, I started to get excited about the idea. As I may have mentioned to a few people, Thailand just doesn't grab my imagination as a travel place. I don't have this list of things and places I want to go. Ask me about Myanmar and I can come up with a dozen places. Oh, I'd love to go here and I want to go there and I want to go there. I get excited about it. Bangladesh, same thing. But Thailand, I don't know. The place has always kind of been a blank slate for me. I'm not familiar with Thailand. I haven't read about the history. I don't have a clear idea of where I'd want to go or why I'd want to go there. And in the past, I've already traveled around Thailand. I've been here many times. So I've been to places all over the country. I've been to Chiang Mai and traveled around the north. And I've been to Koh Samui and Phuket and Koh Phangan and Koh Tao. I've done the beach thing, all the big tourist islands down south. I've sort of traveled around Thailand already, so it's hard to get the energy to do it now. And it would be a lot more expensive for me to travel around Thailand than just to stay here in Mae Sot, where I have a very economical, yet interesting life. Interesting for me, simple man that I am. But that being said, if I had my touring bike here, that's a whole different ballgame. Traveling anywhere on a bike is interesting, no matter where you are. You know, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's like it's the journey, not the destination. So even though I'm not that crazy interested in going to Chiang Mai again, if I had my touring bike here, riding my bike to Chiang Mai and going through the mountains to get there, that would interest me. That would be very cool. So got a couple of my neighborhood dogs ahead of me. I'm giving them a chance to get out of the way. So the last couple of days, I started pondering possibilities for cycling here in Thailand. And yesterday, I even went to 2 bike shops here to find out if it's possible to buy, if it's reasonable to even buy a touring bike and outfit it and go for a ride in Thailand. And there's 2 specialty shops here in Mae Sot, believe it or not. 2 specialty shops that focus on touring bikes, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I know a lot of big cities that don't even have one, and sleepy Mae Sot is lucky enough to have 2. So I visited these shops yesterday, and I wasn't overly surprised, I have to say, when I found out that buying a touring bike and outfitting it is horrendously expensive, no matter where you are in the world. And doing it here in Thailand is even more expensive than most places. So one of these shops is called Bike Signature. I went to that shop one time before to check it out, and I went there again yesterday. Had a nice long chat with the owner, and he specializes in Surly frames. So he starts with a Surly touring bike frame. It's a very well-known touring company out of the United States. They make very good bikes. I would love to have a Surly if I could. So he starts with a Surly frame, and then he will build up a custom bike for you with the components you need. And that's amazing. It's amazing that it can be done here in Mae Sot. But by the time you're done, you're looking at probably, it's over $1,000 US before you even start. And by the time you're done, you're probably looking at a bike that's worth $1,500 US, something like that. And he has a cheaper option. He also deals with a Chinese brand. He orders them from a company in Bangkok. And I think he said the starting point for one of those would be about 20,000 baht. And I don't know off the top of my head how much that is, $700 or $800, $600, $700 US. But it's a lot of money. If you're buying a touring bike you're going to use for years and years and years, it might make sense. But for me to buy a bike like that just to use for 2 or 3 months, when I already have a perfectly good touring bike in storage in Malaysia, that's a tough call, and I don't really have the money to do something like that. So when I visited these touring bike shops, I kind of ran into a dead end financially. By the time you spend that much money on a bicycle, I mean, to be honest, you could have bought a brand new motorcycle for that much money. Certainly a really good used one. So, and even if you didn't, you could use all that money to stay in really nice hotels as you go to Chiang Mai and other places. So the whole bike touring with a brand new touring bike approach is a little bit, yeah, that's tough. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But there's always a but in my stories. But while I was at Bike Signature, the friendly owner and manager there, he told me about another shop here in Mae Sot that he says carries a lot of different types of used bicycles. And he gave me the address of this place, and that's where I'm going this morning. It's just ahead of me on this road here, and I'm going to pop in there and just look at the bikes that this guy has. I've never been to this place before. I've walked by it and I've noticed it, but I've never gone inside to look at the bikes. But the Bike Signature guy, he said it was a good place and they might have bikes big enough for me. That's another problem with the bikes available here. They, of course, cater to the market in Thailand. And though there are Thai people as tall as I am, there aren't that many. So most of the bikes that are for sale are designed for shorter people. So I would have trouble finding a bike frame big enough for me. And he said that this used bike shop might have bigger frame.